Have you guys read a story about a case that's left you wanting to know more? Following cases in the New South Wales local court can sometimes be really easy. Sometimes the details may be delivered straight to you via your newsfeed. However, sometimes it might be tricky. Perhaps your newsfeed isn't telling you enough of the nitty-gritty of the case. Well, there's nothing stopping you informing yourself about legal proceedings. That's what this series is about. My attempt to better inform myself about legal proceedings in the New South Wales local courts, in particular, keeping focused on the elements of the offence. Big disclaimer up front, this series is about being a more informed person. There's one thing we can't do in the local court, that is judge. Only the magistrate gets to do the judging. I'm sure many cases will result in you raising your eyebrows and wanting to judge, but that'll be left up to the magistrate. Like you, I am a person who has a news feed, who sometimes gets hooked by a story. In my experience, if I want to know more about the case or what happened in the end, I usually need to go and find the information myself. Like my other series, when I follow cases, I will only use publicly available information. You can essentially do these same exercises for cases you are interested in. I don't use people's real names. It avoids heaps of privacy and defamation issues. I'm a non-party to the proceedings. I'm not a solicitor involved in the case. I'm not the police. I'm not media. I'm just a face in the courtroom gallery. I'm making this in the Maitland area in the Hunter Valley of New South Wales. I acknowledge the Wanneroo people as the traditional custodians of the land around Maitland. Just a warning before I go on. This series is going to explore animal cruelty. I will try and keep the graphic details out. However, animal cruelty is generally unpleasant. Please skip this series if you prefer. So in January 2024, there was an incident at a wildlife park in Port Stephens that involves a chicken being killed by an alligator, allegedly. A person is charged. I'm going to call him Kevin. It's not his real name. He is 57 years old. Most of the TV and print news outlets cover the story, and the police also issued a media release. I actually didn't intend to follow this case. The first court mention was at Raymond Terrace Local Court, and that happened in February 2024. I didn't attend court, but I read and watched the news stories afterwards. And here's where y'all get my attention. Before I read the headline, I just want to be clear, this won't be a critique on journalism. Rather, this is my experience as a reader absorbing the information about legal proceedings. So just to be clear, it's not for the purpose of singling out this particular newspaper. It's just one of the many examples. The headline reads, "Man accused of throwing hen to alligator denies charge." I decide this case is the one that I want to do this exercise on because I'm not getting the level of detail I want out of my newsfeed. So it's up to me to work out what's going on. For me, the charge is the first thing I'm looking for. The stories do include the charge. The actual charge is aggravated animal cruelty. Feels a bit different when you say aggravated animal cruelty compared to throwing a hen to an alligator. So now we know the charge. Of course, it's all about the elements of the offence. This is where you need to read the law yourself. The elements I've found won't be explained. First, animal cruelty offences generally start with the animal cruelty part. That's Section 5 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1979, and we're in New South Wales. Then there's the additional aggravated element on top of the animal cruelty. So this is Section 6 of the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals Act 1979. The prosecution will need to prove beyond reasonable doubt that the person committed an act of aggravated cruelty upon an animal. Simple sentence, however, each element of the sentence needs to be proven. What I mean by the elements is they need to prove the act of cruelty and the aggravated part. Our laws generally have like dictionaries or definition sections within them that define these elements, and the dictionary is going to be needed to be consulted here. What I'm saying is you may need to read multiple parts of the law to get the whole picture. The prosecution needs to prove an act of cruelty. According to the definitions, it's an act of which an animal is unreasonably, unnecessarily, or unjustifiably, in this case, killed. There are a long list of other things like wounded and overworked. It's not a pleasant list that can happen to animals. Killed is on the list, and we know that it's alleged the chicken was killed. So the prosecution will need to prove that the defendant, Kevin, did something, an act, that killed the chicken which was unreasonable, unnecessary, or unjustifiable. So that's the act part. Then there's the aggravated element that needs to be proven. According to the definitions, this is where a person in charge of an animal shall not fail to exercise reasonable care, control, or supervision of an animal to prevent the act of cruelty upon the animal. Note it says person in charge. According to the definitions, that includes 4 different styles of being in charge. The first is the owner of the animal. The second type is a person who has the animal in the person's possession or custody. Thirdly, where a person who has the animal in its possession is bound to comply with the directions in respect to that animal. And the fourth type involves animals that are in sale yards. The maximum penalty for aggravated animal cruelty is $11,000 fine and or 2 years imprisonment for an individual. Doesn't mean a person will be sentenced to the maximum, just anything from 0 to the maximum. This is different to an act of cruelty upon an animal, which is the Section 5 of the Act. This has a maximum penalty up to 1 year imprisonment. Both Section 5 and Section 6 offences are related, meaning if a person was found not guilty of Section 6, the aggravated cruelty, they could still be found guilty of the Section 5 offence, which is just cruelty. In conclusion, my newsfeed can say all sorts of things about a case. However, I need to remember the case is all about the elements of the offence, so I need to be careful of irrelevant information or distractions.